everyone, it's Jane and welcome back. I'm sorry I've not had any videos for you in the last couple of weeks. I did record some, but I had a rather bad cold, and when it came to editing the videos, I was listening to them and even I couldn't bear to hear me gasping for breath and really struggling. And I thought, I can't publish these. It's bad enough that you've got my strange English accent that can't work out whether she's northern or southern or speak properly without listening to me choking and gasping for breath. So they've gone in the recycle bin. And maybe that's quite fortuitous because I hadn't given any thought whatsoever to the fact that it's Valentine's Day soon and I haven't done anything for it. I've got no project or anything. So I put that right today and I have made this project that's on the screen in front of you. I've done it all from start to finish myself today, and so I know that it doesn't take very long. I also know that I've made quite a few mistakes, and that means that you will benefit from my experience because we can put them right as I'm doing this video, and hopefully you won't have the same mistakes that I had. My first mistake is actually perfectly obvious if we look at this setup. Here's my mock-up over here on the left, and it says here, look, to my love. And indeed, I've got a duplicated version of the text here. And guess where that's supposed to be? Yeah, it's supposed to be down here on the card, so that when it prints on here. Do you know when I realised that it was missing? Not until I was actually putting the card together. So we'll not make that mistake when we do the card in a moment. The other thing that I learned, I wanted to stick within my A4 piece of card for making my own envelope. If you can use bigger pieces of paper on your 12 by 12 mat, maybe you use 12 by 12 paper and card as a rule anyway, you'll be fine. You'd be able to make a bigger envelope anyway. But I was sticking with a 4x4 card, and I did the envelope, and this blue dotted line is where it will fold, and then the little pink line inside is where the card would be. I didn't leave enough room here because I decided to put the front piece of the card, the white, up on foam pads, and so this little gap that I left, while a flat card would fit in quite neatly, mine was a little bit tight. So when we make our envelope in a moment, I'm going to do a bigger offset so that we've got a little more wiggle room if you want to put your card on foam tape, or even if you want to add other embellishments. I just made it a little bit too tight. I have worked out that if I make a slightly smaller card, I can make a slightly bigger envelope and still fit on an A4 piece of paper. So that should make me happy, shouldn't it? Do you want to see? I'll show you quickly. Here's my envelope. And the other thing I didn't do is I forgot to do an overlap. I didn't have the left and right edges meeting so that they could stick down. And I'll put that right when we do it as well. And also we'll talk about setting the pressure for the score lines. I've probably made them a little bit too heavy, and so, although I quite like the effect it gives, it looks quite good. So here's a quick look at my finished envelope and my finished card. Of course, just imagine that it says to my love there. My poor husband will probably get this version. I don't know, maybe I'll write on it or something for him, who knows. There'll be some more photos towards the end of this video. I've photographed the process of putting the card together. It's not something that I usually do, but I have done today. Ideally, yes, it would be lovely if I could show you a proper little process video, you know, with the hands and everything, and talk you through it while I'm doing it. But, well, you wouldn't see anything with my hands, and actually you'd probably hear me grunting and groaning even more, because when I'm using my hands to do things with paper, I hold my breath a lot. I forget to breathe, and then I'm suddenly sort of gasping, so I don't think it'd be much fun. So with all that said, let's close these big photos out of the way. I'll show you another look at it later on, and let's make a start. And I think we'll start with the easy thing first. We'll do the envelope, and we'll start in a new document. I've got one over here, look. And we want snap to grid on. If you're following along when I'm talking about 3 squares along and all that sort of thing, then your spacing will need to be in inches, and you'll want 8 divisions. Let's just zoom in a little bit. And this might be quite a long video. I'm not going to rush, and I might even stop and go and get myself a cup of tea. Let's see. Open your line and fill style panels. As you know, I usually always have them open over there. And choose any colour you like, but I'm choosing this little orange one, second up here. And I'm putting my transparency to about 40. And we want the line style left as it is. We want a cut line. And we're going to draw our first shape. And this is going to be our card shape. And as I said, I did do it at 4 by 4. But this time we're going to do 3.875 by 3.875. In fact, I might do it even more. Go down one more. Let's do 3.75. Just to give myself a bit more room. And the reason I've wanted the transparency out is, you'll see in a moment, we need to be able to see the grid behind. So that's our card size. Now open the offset panel and do offset. You want corner. Now remember, I said I didn't give enough room on my envelope, and this is where I made my mistake. I only did it at 0.125, but of course in my head I'm thinking that's 0.125 each side, but it isn't. It's 0.125, but then there's only a bit of it, 0.6 that side and 0.6-ish this side. Really, I want 1/4 of an inch all round, so let's take the one out and make it 0.25. And click apply. And now I've got my 0.125 each side, which is exactly what I want. And let's just fill that with a lighter yellow so that I can see it. So this darker bit is where our card will be, and the light yellow that we're going to be messing around with now is the actual envelope. Next, you want to be using the line tool here, and we want draw a polygon. Click the second yellow, well, the bottom yellow this time, so it matches the background of this square, and then start, well, you can start anywhere, but I'm going to start on the left and click once in that top left corner, and then remember this time to go across by at least one little square past halfway. Now halfway is about there, isn't it? I would think ish. I suppose that's why I picked 4. It was so easy to work out where halfway was. So let's just gauge it at being somewhere there. So if I go to this heavy line here, I reckon that would do us. So let's say there, halfway, and then we'll just drop down to there, across to that left hand corner, and then up to finish the shape and click. So if I click this background, where is halfway? Yes, halfway was one in from there. So I've gone across one. So that should be okay. Let's just move it one more square. Let's go one more across, just to be on the safe side. There we go. Now, you could draw it from the other side, but you can also cheat. And, well, no, it's not cheating really, is it? Let's replicate, and we want to mirror, and we want to mirror it to the other side. And of course it's meeting in the middle there, so now we need to bring it in like so. And now you see I've got a good overlap for my envelope, which means I'll be able to stick it together properly. Now we're going to draw our bottom piece, and we want to start in this left hand corner. Again, go up to wherever the middle is, and of course remember the middle is one in from this heavy grid line where I've got mine positioned, and go up far enough so that you've got something to be able to glue it to. So about there, and click there, finish the polygon off, and that's the bottom. And for the top, I'm actually still going to draw it. I'm not going to bother replicating this. I'm going to start again at the top left, and I think I'll come down to about here, and then up to the right and finish the polygon off. And you can see I'm not level in the middle there, so with snap to grid on, I'll just pull it across, close point editing. So there is our basic envelope, and you can see all of our lines overlapping. Now, of course, we've got to lay it out flat so that it will cut. So the first thing we need to do is start with the top and go Object, Mirror, flip horizontally. Wrong one. I always get these wrong. Mirror, flip vertically, because I want it to go up to the top. And then use your arrows to move it up so it joins again, like so. Do the same with the bottom. Object, mirror, flip vertically. Use your down arrows on your keyboard and position it at the bottom. Similarly, we need these. These are horizontal, flip horizontal, and arrow keys to the side. Object, mirror, flip horizontally, and take that out to the side. Now turn snap to grid off. And then on each of these pieces we need to go in by 2 presses of the arrow keys. So this one on the right, you want to go 1, 2 to the left. The one at the bottom, 1, 2 to the top. The one at the left, 1, 2 to the right. And the one at the top, 1, 2 to the bottom. And let me zoom in over by drawing around there. And the reason we've done that is so that we've got this very slight overlap. And we've done that so that any second now when I click weld, the shapes have overlapped enough to weld this all into one piece. Let's move our centre piece out of the way and select all of our envelope shape. And then up here I can use the weld selected shapes into one shape. Leave it where it is, don't move it. Let's do an offset of this again, and I want 0.25 like we did originally. And I want to change the line style. Now I did big dashes on mine, but let's try the smaller ones. And let's change the colour to blue. And these will be our score lines. Now of course you don't have to do the score lines if you don't want to. I'm going to group that together for the moment. If you think you can line it up and score without, then fine, don't bother with this, but I can't. I wouldn't manage it. And now we need to put this back in position so that it meets the edges. So for that, we need to zoom in so we can see. Now I can close those for the moment because I don't need them. And let's see if we can line this up. Oops, undo. And I want to bring it to the front. There we go. It was behind. So ultimately, you just want to make sure that you've got this as near to where it was originally as you can. And I think that's pretty close. I think that will do nicely. See, I'm being too fussy now. I shouldn't have zoomed in. I should have just left it. That will do perfectly well without me messing with it anymore. So I'm going to ungroup that so that I can move this centerpiece out of the way and just group the score lines and the envelope shape together. And let's fit to window again so that we can see it. Now, for the moment, while we're working on the other parts of the card, I'm going to just move it over, but I'm not going to rotate it or anything just yet. Right, let's make our card. Now, I've still got my cherry cobbler colour here, which is handy. If you want a specific colour, remember you can use the rainbow picker here, but you can also, if I just click my cherry cobbler colour and put my transparency back to 0, you can put in the hex code here or the RGB if you know it, and I've got all the colours for Stampin' Up somewhere, so I've already entered it. Now I want to duplicate that because I need a white front piece, so let's give ourselves the white front. And now I need a heart shape, don't I? Now I'm going to cheat and I'm going to copy this one into this window, and we'll use this as a little bit of a template so that you're not watching me spend ages fiddling with a heart because I don't quite like how it looks. I was a little bit of a perfectionist when it came to doing this heart earlier. So if I was going to be doing this, let's lower the transparency. Okay, so there's our idea of how I want to draw a heart. So how do you draw a heart? You draw a curve shape, and when it's not going to need a fill colour for the moment, so let's use the yellow again that we had earlier. We do want a red line for it to be cutting, and let's make sure, yes, it's still set at solid. And then it's basically a case of starting and finishing like we did for the envelope. So you'd start in the middle. It probably would have helped if I'd got snap to grid on again. Snap to grid works really well for doing hearts, but I haven't. So let's just use the grid as I can see it and have a fair stab at doing it. And then when you get to the joining piece, you click and let go, and you've got your basic shape. Of course, it's a bit wiggly waggly, and so that's when we double click and we've got our point editing. So let me zoom in, because once you've drawn this shape, you don't have to do it again. We'll be resizing it, but we won't have to keep drawing it. So let's do our quick double click. And first of all, the middle point here is going to be a corner, and you want to put up the little blue handles like so. I use the grid as a positioning system so that I can make it fairly symmetrical. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll be close enough. And this one wants to be as level as I can make it, and one square out. So let's try that. And then we just need to alter these handles and pull them until it sort of matches the one that we've got underneath. It's not going to be exact because, of course, I did the other one differently. So let's just have a bit of a go at making it something like bearable. There you go, that's not bad, is it? So that will do. And let's do the same over here. Let's move that over. Pull the blue handle until it looks about right. And then let's move this one down here. Try and match it with the other one on the other side. Make it look nice and smooth, like so. And you could spend a little bit longer getting a decent heart shape, but something like that will probably be okay. And now I'm going to fill it with the red and put up my transparency, click out and move it across. It's a little bit wiggly waggly, it's probably not as nice as I'd like, as smooth, but it will do. Right, so that's how you do your heart. And then it's a question of lining it up in your white area. Let's move this one out of the way. And let's move these two. Oh, don't want the red, I was trying to be clever. Let's move this down here and move this. So we want to centre these two together. And you can use this quick icon here. That will centre these two images. When you draw around them together, it will centre them quickly to each other. And you can decide then if your heart is too big or too small. So we know we're going to be putting some other bits on here, don't we? We're going to have 2 hearts at the bottom here, and I've got 3 up in that corner. So actually, I think this might be a little bit too big. So I can hold my Shift key down and just drag it in, and let's make it 2.5-ish. 5.5, let's do that, or 5.49, that will do. And let's centre them again. And I think that might be alright. And then let's do our other hearts that we want as well. Now, we can open the transform window here and scale. And in the scale box here, I can decide how much smaller I want this heart to be. So let's try 60%. And that's not small enough. So undo, and let's try 25. That's a little bit better, isn't it? Still a bit too big though. And you may wonder why I'm doing undo instead of just then typing in another number or going further down. And that's because if I do 25 and I still think, well, no, that's a bit, no, actually I wanted it smaller, I've now got to do a different number because I don't want another 25 of that. If I click apply again, look, it's going to be really tiny. Undo, undo. So actually it would be probably another 80. No, that's still, so let's try another 80. That's probably a bit better. And let's do a 90 now because I still want a bit more. Probably be just as quick to type in the numbers. But you decide on your size, and then we'll duplicate again and make a smaller one. Now, how much smaller than this one here do I want it? I reckon, let's try 60. Yes, that'll do. And then I'm going to go back to this bigger one because I want 3 up here, and we'll start with one that size and duplicate, and we'll go for the 60 again. Okay, and then I want one smaller than that, and I'm going to go 60 again. Oops, undo, duplicate, and then go. Actually, I won't. Is 60 too small? Possibly. Undo. Let's go for 75 actually. I can't remember exactly what numbers I did before. And then it's a question of I didn't like them just being straight, so I thought I'd just give them a little bit of a turn and a twist. And similarly, let's do the same up here. And move this one closer, give it a little rotate out, and move this one a little closer. Okay, I think that's alright. So then we need that wonderful text that I forgot. Let's put that on now before we forget. And a good rule of thumb when it comes to text is I used Edwardian script for the Valentine word. So let's try Edwardian script. I want it filled with the red, but I don't want it to have a cut line because it's not going to be cut or scored or anything like that. So let's just type down here Valentine. And of course I've got my transparency low still, so let's put that back. Click out. And let's see, how big do we want it? I want it to fit. Oh, the envelope says to my Valentine. This is supposed to say love. Come on, Jane. Let's pay attention, shall we? To my love is what this one should be saying. So let's try again. And I'm going to line it up with the bottom of that heart there. So I'm just going to use my arrow keys to slide it over here. And about there, I think. And we'll make it just a little bit bigger. Okay. In fact, if you want a quick way of lining things up, you can pull a guide down instead of doing what I was doing. So place your guide at the bottom of the heart there, and then I can push this, and it's snapping, but I don't want the whole thing to snap. So let's just, there we go. That'll do nicely. And then when you don't want the guide anymore, click it so it's dark blue and press delete on your keyboard. Now, when you've got a nice scripty font, you want something plain to go with it, something that's called sans serif. So anything that doesn't have little pieces on it, so you could get away with an ordinary Arial or whatever. I've got a font that I use a lot called Open Sans. I'm going to take my transparency down while I remember and click my text tool, and it's going to be a bit big, but it doesn't matter for the moment. To my love, and let's bring that here and then make it a little bit smaller and use the arrows to line it up. I think I might go closer to the L for this. And then while it's selected, I'm going to hold my shift key and click the L and group the piece of text together so that if I want to move things around, I can. Right, we'll do the envelope in a moment. I'm also going to select all my hearts by holding the Shift key down, clicking duplicate, and then group. And I'm just going to move those over here because I'm going to want some for my envelope. Now I'm ready to make my cutout shapes. Oops, didn't need to open stipple there. One of the quickest ways to do this is to open the Modify panel, select the hearts and the white background, hold the Shift key down and select these two hearts as well, but not your lettering, and now click Make Compound Path. And immediately it cuts out my heart shapes exactly where I had everything positioned. And if I did that earlier with the shapes, but I didn't leave my text here, and if I had, I wouldn't have ended up printing it without. So there's a little trick for you. Do it that way and you won't forget your text. Then when you've done that, select your text and your card together, click group, so that you can move them over the red one if you want to, or you can move them around on your paper when it comes to lining it up for cut and print and cut even. So that's the front of our card. And in fact, I've realised I've made a mistake because I haven't got a copy of my big heart there, and I need it. So I'm going to quickly cheat and duplicate, bring it down here, ungroup, take off my text because I don't need it, and this time I'm going to use release, and I can pull out my big heart, and then I can get rid of these because I don't need them, because we've forgotten a step, or rather I've forgotten a step. I need the insert heart that I cut out. If you remember my original, I've got it on a little piece of string, so it needs to be smaller than this. So let's use our Shift key and drag this smaller, and then just move it until we think, yeah, that might do. So, and if you want to have a better idea, move it up over your red background, like so, and it'll give you an idea if you've left enough space. So it's 2.3 inches there. So shall we go just a little bit more? Oh, 2.525 is like, I wonder if that's, oh, that's not bad, yeah. 2.25-ish will do. So that's our second heart that's going to cut out. And then we've got this, which is our front. But I want one of the small hearts to cut out over here. So that's why, at least I did remember to save these this time, didn't I? So let's just quickly ungroup one of these and duplicate one and bring it over to our heart over here and straighten it up. Do you want it straight or at an angle? Well, you can decide whichever you want. I think I might put it at a bit of an angle. And select both of them again and make compound path. And now I've got my cutout for the middle, and I want two of those because I decided to put mine on some string. So I want one to go in front of the string and one to go behind. So now I've got the front of my card with my text, and I've got my 2 heart pieces. So we're doing all right. Now let's finish this envelope, shall we? So we'll move these over just for the moment. We don't need this red piece because I didn't bother cutting my red card with the Cameo. I just used my paper trimmer. And let's do our envelope. So I want a white envelope, so let's change it to white, and we can put up our transparency now. And I want a couple of hearts on the flap when it sticks down. So, which I think I'll go for these 2 small ones here. So I'm going to group those together. And I always duplicate. It's always handy because then you've always got copies of what you want. Now, remember, this is going to be printed and you're going to be scoring it along here and folding it down. So you've got to imagine these are the other way around. Now, when I was doing some videos last week, I was doing them about the workspace, and there were things that I said, oh, I can't see why you'd ever need this. And do you know, it's occurred to me today exactly why you'd need something, and it's this, the rotate view. Because when I did this earlier with the hearts, you'd have laughed because I'm actually trying to turn my head right round to imagine the hearts the other way up and what sort of rotation and stuff I needed to do. When really all I needed to do was this, rotate the view 180 degrees. Look, so now I know that they're upside down and I know I want to rotate them. Simple. And yet there was me saying, oh, I can't see whatever you'd need to rotate the whole view for. Why would you want to do that? Well, it just shows you, you see, sometimes I'm just stupid. And look how quick that is this time, you see? I say this time like you were here watching me earlier and you weren't. But I was ages mirroring and rotating to try and get my hearts the right way. Honest, I mean, you'd have laughed. I'm supposed to be doing videos to teach you how to use it, and I was making a right old mess of it. So there you go. You can rotate the view, and it makes it so much easier to visualize because now you know you're going to be folding along that, and it's going to be, when it's folded down, this is what it's going to look like. Right, now we can go back to our original view, and we can put in the text on the front. So let's make this bigger. And as you know, I do fit to window and 1+ zoom in to give me an idea of the right size for my fonts. And I think that's probably not far off. I might go to 3.5. Let's do 3.5 wide. And I could just line it up, but I'm going to eyeball it. I think that might do. And I'm going to open my text again because I want open sans again. And I want to say to my Valentine this time. And let's make this smaller. And I fitted it the first time in between the L and the T. And I think that will do. About there. Excellent. And I should have left it, let's select that and the text and group it together. And then let's get our other hearts and do these little 3 hearts. I'm going to group those together and duplicate them, and they're going to go up in this top left hand corner. and then fit to window, and I'm going to select the whole envelope and all of the text and the hearts and group it together. And that's so I can now do my little bit of rotating to make it fit in my cut lines so that I can print and cut. And I think, oh, I'm just a bit too far over there. There we go. I think that will do nicely. Now you might be thinking, oh, Jane, you're up in this hatch area. And indeed I am. If we zoom in. But you can see the hatches in there. As long as I don't go up into these hatches here, it'll be fine. And you know it printed alright because you've seen the one that I've done. So when it's like this and there's this little bit of space here, I can go up to it, but I don't go actually into the hash area. But I can get away with it up in this little bit here. So I'm within everything there, that's fine. But we can get rid of all our line and fills for now because we don't need those. And I should be able to fit this in the bottom corner. Now, can I still fit the two hearts on? I did earlier, but I don't know whether I'll manage it now that my envelope is a little bit bigger. So let's see, if we do a bit of fancy rotating, can I get everything? Ooh, a bit close. I'm not going to get it all on, am I? I wonder. I did so well earlier, but it looks like I'm not going to be. Oh, I might be. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Yes, look at that. Ooh, just managed it. There we go. So I can still, even with my slightly bigger envelope, I can still just about get everything out of my one piece of white A4. Isn't that excellent? I'm so tight-fisted, that's my trouble. And that's it. That's how you could lay out your card for print and cut. Now, let's talk about settings. I've got registration marks on, type 1 for the Cameo. Now, I have altered the length and the thickness of mine, and I can tell you that it has worked for me. I've got them at 1/2 inch and a thickness of 0.5, and my Cameo has had no trouble reading them. And that's given me just a little bit of extra space on my A4 piece of card. If you're not happy changing the default settings, the dimensions and length and thickness, then leave them and use more than one piece. The other thing I change always is the position, the inset. The default is about 625 or something, but I always drop it down to 0.394. And again, my Cameo has no trouble reading the registration marks. The only time that I have trouble with registration marks is if it's very sunny and the lid is up on my Cameo. Because I work near my big kitchen window, I did notice that if the sun is at the right angle, especially at this time of year, winter, when the sun is low in the sky, it's interfered with the laser finding the registration mark, and so it hasn't read it, and my mat's just gone wheeling on straight through the back. The other issue I've had is if my printer ink is getting a little dry, or if it's not as dark as it should be, and if these marks aren't truly black, then it's had a little bit of a problem. I've sometimes overcome that. I've managed to draw in by hand with a black pen, and that's sometimes fixed it if I haven't wanted to do another print of the page. I have to say that certainly, I think for about the last year or so, I haven't had those issues. I've got decent ink. I use a HP Envy 5530 printer, so nothing particularly special. It's not a high-end printer, and I have no problems with it. The only other issue I've had with my registration marks is, you know, when you're lining up your piece of paper, if I zoom in on here, on your mat, you've got the grid like you have here. And if I, is it on, which one is it, reveal? If I go to the reveal, right, put that down. And you've got the dark line here where the grid starts, and then the plastic clear of the mat. And then this bit underneath where the grid starts is the sticky bit. And you're lining up your piece of paper with this corner here. Sometimes, if I haven't quite covered the first black of the line that starts the grid here, it's interfered with it reading this registration mark. But again, practice makes perfect. For the last year or so, since I've been making a lot more cards and doing a lot of print and cut, I haven't had the same problem. So that's how I managed to get the most out of my A4 piece of paper. And you know that this sort of layout worked because here's my original, which was my 4x4 card. And I'll have some photos shortly, and you'll see that this is exactly what I took out of my printer and took to my Cameo and ended up with the card. So now let's just talk about the settings. So for the line and the cutting. So I've got a feeling I've forgotten to take off the cut lines of my hearts, which I will want to do. So let's ungroup these, because we're not going to want cut lines on our hearts. So go to line style, turn them off, and then let's select these ones here and turn those off. Okay, and now I can just group all that back together. Right, let's go to our send window, and it's going to look in this simple area like everything is going to be cutting. So let's go to line, and you can see here I've got my colours. I've got red and I've got blue. So the red lines I want to cut. Now, when I did this myself a couple of hours ago, I moved the scoring to the top. So I'm going to click on the blue and drag it up, and we're going to do that first. You can see here my material, I've called it SU White. I've got a preset saved called Stampin' Up White. I don't want it to cut, I want it to score. So I'm going to change to score. And down here it changes the force to 15. And if you remember my photo, I said that I thought that that was perhaps still a little bit too much. I called it pressure earlier, but it's called force now. So depending on your card and whatever you've used, you should have an idea of what sort of pressure it takes or force it takes to cut well, and what your blade should be. I've got my blade at number 2. I have a speed of 4. I don't go too fast. It wants to be ratchet blade for me, but you might have auto blade. And I'm going to, this time I'd say put the force at maybe 8 rather than 15, because it did go almost all the way through. So I think 8 might do it. You probably would be fine with something like 6 actually, depending on the thickness of your card. I used Stampin' Up, like I said, and it worked really well. And then for the for the red lines, of course, we want those to cut. And again, change your blade to whatever it is you're using. and I've got my blade for this on 3. Oh, now that would be why. I've just remembered. If we go back here to the score, it's telling me I needed a blade depth of 2. I didn't change my blade depth because it's a ratchet blade and it's awkward for me to keep reaching. I left it set at 3, and that will be why I need my force right down. In fact, I'd probably need it on something like 2 because it's already quite deep, because I've got it a blade depth up. So if you're on an auto blade and you do put the blade down to 2, try the 15 that it gives you in its default settings, because I often find that Silhouette's default settings usually work quite well. And this is one of the things when you're making videos like this, we can forget what we've done with our own machine to make it just a bit different. And I know I've moved my blade to 3 when I'm cutting, because Stampin' Up card is just a little bit thicker than what I was using, and it wasn't cutting so well, so I moved my blade to 3. I do intend actually to get a Cameo 3 later this year, simply because the auto blade will make it so much easier for me to alternate between blade depths without having to actually take the blade out. So when I'm cutting, I have it on a blade depth of 3 for Stampin' Up white card, speed of 4 again, and a force of 30, although I think by the time I get through to the other machine, because on this machine where I design or do the most of my design work, I don't actually have my Silhouette connected here, it's in the other room. So I think by the time we get into there, this force is 33. I have it on the maximum. It might be because my blade is getting old. I also have the overcut on, and that's this little triangle symbol here. And if I click that, or put this little tick mark on, and then these 3 dots, click it and it'll open the advanced. You can set your line segment overcut here. And I've got it at 0.2, and I did the hearts and everything on that, and I have to say it's the best cut that I've done. I wasn't one who used overcut a lot. I thought I was doing perfectly all right without it. But I've been watching a few videos lately where they've said, you know, you get so much better with an overcut. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And yeah, they're right. It did make a much smoother job of the hearts. I didn't get any little rough bits. And the corner of my card and my envelope cut really well. So again, how much of an overcut? It depends. I tried 0.1 and wasn't sure that I wanted that, so I've gone up to 0.2, and I actually think it works really well for me. And you can save your user-defined settings if you wish to. It'll ask you when you've made any changes if you want to save, and you'll be able to click Save. And then to close this advanced area, there's a white X up there, and it takes you back to this line area. And so once you've set your materials and put them in the order, I decided to score first, because I figured if we did all the cutting first, it's going to be off down here to the end of the mat and then have to come back. I think it's better just to let it start off up here. And so that's why I went for doing scoring first. And it worked very well, I have to say. And so that was it. You'd set all this up. Oh, and of course you'd remember to save your file, of course. And then you'd click your send and wait for it to go and do its magic. So I can't do the actual putting it all together in front of you, so I am going to go and get my photographs and I probably won't edit them too much. I like also to show you that the colours without editing them, unless I've had some light issues. And I think it did keep going sunny and dark, so I might have to just tweak them a little. But I want you to be able to see that the colours that I use or that I print turn out the same from what you see on my screen here, that usually that's what I get when it's on the card as well. Now, admittedly, we've not got a lot of colour going on today, just a little bit of red, but again, I want you to know that at least it still looks and matches the cherry cobbler cardstock that I'm going to be using for the base. So I'm going to close this little bit of the video, and I think I might go and get that cup of tea, and then I'll be back and talk you through my little process of how I put my card together. So see you in a moment. And here I am with my 2 card bases cut from a piece of A4 card. They are 4 wide by 8 high and then scored in half so that I can fold them. And let's move to our next photo, and here I've got my print and cut page that came straight from the Silhouette Studio design software. I've printed it and I've lined it up, as I said, and it's all ready to go off into the Silhouette. And here it is, and this is before I've unloaded the mat. Usually, and if I remember, I do this, before I click unload, I lift up the card to make sure that it's cut cleanly in case there's anywhere that needs doing again. And if you do that before you unload the mat, you can click send and send it back through again, and it will cut in the same place. So I always just double check that everything is lifting off all right. Then I peel off my excess and put it to one side, and then I've just got to take off the pieces that I need. Here's my envelope, and as you can see, this is where I was saying that perhaps my force was a little too harsh, and it's because I forgot myself that I have the blade set at 3, and so I saw it at blade depth 2 for scoring and thought, oh yeah, that'll be fine, not thinking that my blade is actually set to 3, so it has almost gone through, but not so far that it's actually coming apart when it's folded. And you can see that here, I've folded it and scored it, and while I've got a bit of a funny little edge, which I quite like, it isn't actually ripping or coming apart. And here I've just put a little bit of glue with a quickie glue pen that I've got, not in the middle of course, because remember my pieces didn't overlap, so we don't want glue in the middle. So I've just put it on either side a little bit there to hold it down, and it worked. It was holding fine. Here's the front, and you can see again my little wavy edge, which I don't know, that's quite good. I might try something else with that. Here I'm lining up a piece of baker's twine, making sure I get the right length. And here I am sticking it down. I use Hermer repositionable glue. It comes in a roller. I'll show you that in a moment. And here I've just covered all the heart and just stuck my bit of twine down the middle. And if you look over here, I've also put all the glue on this one. And it should be the opposite way around, because if I can't stick that on there, my glue isn't face down. I'd want to glue on both sides, so I've got it the wrong way round. So I sat for a moment and thought, oh, what the heck am I going to do? Have I got to go and do a whole other print and cut? And then I remembered, I'm using Hermer repositionable. You can rub it off with your thumb. So I did. And so I rubbed all the glue off this side, and it rubs into like a little ball like this, and you just collect it all up. I've left a little bit on there so you can see that it was the same piece. So I rubbed it all off and got rid of it all and glued it on the right side. And this is the handy little Herma dispenser. You can't get these bright pink ones now. I've had that quite a few years. I think it was for some fundraiser for breast cancer. But I will link to Amazon where you can buy a Herma dispenser and the repositionable refills. Because I use them all the time. I don't see anybody else use them, but I absolutely love it. Anyway, eventually I've got my hearts the right way and I've stuck them together, and then I've put a piece of Herma on the back of the card so that I can just hold my string in place with my heart. And then I've had fun with the foam pads. These are from Stampin' Up as well. And I always, when it's on something big, if I've got any edge pieces, I use those as well. So that's why I've got one big edge. But usually they're just these hexagonal pieces. So I've done all that. And then, well, I'll be sticking the card together. And here it is finished, of course, and just raised up on the foam pads, and there's the envelope again. And remember, the back of my envelope, I didn't do the overlap on this original one, but on the one that I showed you on the video, we did have an overlap, so that will glue together better. And also, of course, we've done a bigger offset to give ourselves room for all this nice padding of the foam behind the white card. And finally, here's a little close-up of the cut. You can see that I did get a very nice cut on the point here of the heart. It is one of the best that I've done, I have to say. So an overcut certainly does work well. And even on these little hearts, it's done a really good clean cut. Probably the best that I've had for quite a while. And there we are. That's today's project. I'm sorry this has been, well, it's probably just about over an hour, this video, but it's a project from start to finish and it's relatively easy. And we've discussed quite a lot of things. I mean, we've talked quite a lot about settings and that little trick with rotating the whole mat so that we could visualize our hearts when they're printed. And we've talked about cut settings and line settings, and registration marks. So we've covered quite a lot of ground in this project. I hope you've enjoyed it. Until I see you next time, which may well be the live stream that I was talking about doing, take care.